The story begins with our story protagonist riding in a bus during the night while listening to some music in his earphones. His name is Ming, a high school student. He loves anime and games, a comfortable life that makes him feel satisfied. But his ordinary life turned upside down just because of his curiosity. He was walking home and saw an abandoned place. He last remembered that there was an ongoing building that was built in this area, but he wondered why it stopped. He removed his earphones and climbed into the fence to check the place. But then, he was startled since he only witnessed an explosion inside. There were two people fighting with their power abilities, and one of them was a lady. The lady was holding a sword, and this sword was too sharp. She pointed it on the ground while she angrily stared at her opponent, which is a male. They both strike an attack together and they both block and deflect each attack. Numerous more explosions happened in the area that completely destroyed the place. The lady was panting and her opponent advised her to hand over the box, and he also said he could save her life in the face of an arc. Stop dreaming. The fairy must choose her own partner. The lady replied. Oh, do you really treat fairies like humans? That's so disgusting. The man said. The lady then stated that she didn't care at all if it was disgusting, as long as she was not the same as this man who depended on money and judged her. The man was annoyed with her accusation. He then charged at the lady, aiming his weapon at her, but the lady wasn't affected since the man ended up hitting the ground. This time, Ming completely climbed the fence and jumped inside. As he landed, he saw how the place was destroyed and even heard a rumbling sound of destruction. He got scared and he was puzzled about what to do. The lady used some boost for her boots and dashed at her opponent. The man also charged at him, holding his weapon and attacked it to the lady. The lady was aware of it. She immediately flicked her body and deflected the weapon of her enemy. The weapon was unfortunately headed to Ming, so Ming was so scared and covered himself with his arms. Lucky for him that the flaming weapon ended up hitting the wall. He thought he was safe without knowing that there was something shining above, and this thing created something like a meteor and headed to him. Unfortunately, this thing struck at the back of Ming. Ming felt severe pain, and the two people fighting were shocked to see someone affected by their fight. Ming screamed in agony and he felt like his body was floating while there was a fairy trying to reach him. Ming saw the fairy with his own eyes, and this time, his ordinary life changed completely. He screamed continuously while there was a blinding light emerging from his body. The lady was looking at him and someone was talking with her, calling her by the name Ayla and asking her how the bonding process started so coincidentally. At this moment, a cocoon covered Ming's body. The man at the same time was wondering what was going on. Both of them were staring at the cocoon, but the man was aware of what would happen next, so he summoned his weapon and charged at the cocoon while telling Ming not to blame him if he died, but instead blame himself for suddenly appearing. He stabbed the cocoon with his weapon and the one talking with Ayla, asking her to stop the bonding process. But then, as per Ayla, the energy fluctuation of this cocoon doesn't seem to belong to the second generation, but she's also not sure if it belongs to the first generation. The man, whom Ayla mentioned by the name Johnson, might not have even seen a cocoon second generation, that's why he dared to attack numerous times. Johnson suddenly slid backward and he was shocked, thinking that the second generation fairies have this much cocoon strength. He grips tightly into his weapon and spins around. His flame became so powerful and his body also started flaming. "Let me see how solid you can be," he uttered. He was so overloaded and was witnessed by Ayla. Johnson screamed while dashing at the cocoon. His flame struck on the cocoon but shockingly, he bounced back. But still, Johnson managed to break the cocoon, and the fairy talking to Ayla assumed that Ming would be in danger. But Ayla disagreed. Something sharp possessed Ming's body, which surprised Johnson. Ming this time transformed into someone else. He becomes scary, not just the ordinary young man anymore. Ayla was also shocked upon seeing a fairy above Ming. Although she knows that this fairy will be strong, she never expected it would be the most powerful fighting spirit in the first generation. She mentioned that this fairy is known as the Queen of Thorns. Ming was holding a purple sword while Johnson aimed his weapon at him. But then, Johnson was confused upon seeing Ming dashing at him at a fast speed. Ming instantly attacked him without any hesitation and Johnson screamed in agony. He kneeled on the ground and continuously screamed. Still, Ming didn't feel any hesitation at all. His eyes sparkled and attacked Johnson with his sword. Not just that, but he also kicked Johnson strongly, causing Johnson to fly away. Johnson's blood dripped on the ground and his wound was located in his eye. He was so confused about what happened to Ming, knowing that Ming was just a normal kid. Also, his overload will reach its limit soon. Ming is still ready to spar. But then, Johnson stares at Ayla, then looks back at Ming and says that he'll come back for him next time. He then jumped away, leaving Ayla and Ming in the area. Johnson then jumped around to flee, and the moment Johnson disappeared, the sharp things around Ming's body slowly vanished. Ming gets back to his senses, but he's already too weak to react. The last person he sees is Ayla, and he collapses, wondering what happened to him. He almost fell on the ground, but Ayla assisted him and said, "Welcome to the fairy world, stranger." The next day, Ming recalls the incident, but it was too blurry. He woke up because of the alarm. He was annoyed the moment it rang, so he crashed it to make it stop. He held his head and tried to reach his eyeglass, but his eyeglass was missing. He feels weird as he thought everything was just a dream. He gets up, wondering where his eyeglass was. He got off his bed and went directly to the restroom, but he was shocked the moment he saw himself in the mirror with a nosebleed. He was so confused about how he got the bleeding, but he forgot about it since the alarm tickled again, which meant he was about to be late. Meanwhile, the media was in the abandoned place on Shidong Road, the place where the incident happened last night. According to the reporter, some people reported that there was a huge explosion in this place right now. But luckily, no injuries have been found. At this moment, Ming was heading to school. He was running as fast as he could and he passed through the abandoned place. One officer tried to stop him from entering the place, but then he didn't listen at all. He passed behind the lady and accidentally bumped her. His face was shown in the record, but he didn't bother to stop. He arrived at his school and immediately headed to his room. As he entered, his teacher was mad at him for coming late and warned him to sweep the classroom for a whole week once he dared to be late again next time. Ming promised not to do it again, and he then went to his table. As he sat down, the student next to him, who was also his friend, said that he was so brave for having the guts to be late for Kai Ziyutu's class. Ming held his head and reasoned that he overslept last night. He then rattled as he realized that something really happened yesterday. He looked at his hand while thinking about the scene last night. His friend then asked why he became silent all of a sudden. Unfortunately, the teacher heard his friend's loud voice and immediately hit something on his face, and he ended up in pain while Ming was staring at him in confusion. After their morning class, they walked into the field and Ming's friend noticed something unusual to him. Ming then said that his glasses were lost and he couldn't find it even though he searched for it many times. His friend was surprised that Ming went to school without wearing eyeglasses. While they were talking, there were students playing soccer on the field. One student strongly hit it and accidentally kicked it into the area where Ming was standing. Ming's friend suddenly laughed upon seeing the soccer ball headed to Ming, but Ming was clueless and asked him what was funny. The ball was almost near Ming, but before it could hit him, he easily caught it barehandedly and felt no pain despite the strong force of air. Ming himself was shocked as he realized that he easily caught the soccer ball with his left hand. His friend was also impressed and thought he had power he kept on hiding. A lady suddenly came and called Ming's friend. His friend then excused himself and informed Ming that he would kill later, but for Ming, this guy is just a hassle. At this time, he heard a dog barking behind him. The dog was so mad and jumped on him, then bit his hand. Ming was shocked to see that he was bitten. He was so annoyed at the dog and immediately swung his arm, causing the dog to fly away. He then looked at his wound and decided to get a vaccination. But he was surprised as he witnessed how his wound instantly healed and no scratch left. This gave him more confusion. He went back to his room and he was still wondering about what happened last night. He scratched his head as he felt annoyed that he could not recall anything. He was startled the moment he heard his teacher call everyone's attention. Their teacher asked them to be quiet since he needed to introduce a new student. He said that this student was a transferee and a female student. The lady entered and heard everyone say she was so beautiful. Ming's friend was also dumbfounded. He called Ming, but he was shocked to see Ming's face. Ming was still speechless while staring at the lady, since it turned out that the new transferee was Ayla. Because of Ayla, Ming recalled the scene last night that he thought was a dream. He was sweating as he felt nervous. Ayla at the same time introduced herself in the Ayla Clemens. She said that her father was French while his mother was Chinese. All the men inside were captivated by her beauty, but Ayla was only staring at Ming. The teacher then ordered them all to be quiet and instructed Ayla to sit down in the front row. Because of her beauty, even the professor blushed while staring at her face. Ayla confidently told the teacher that she wanted to sit behind her classmate Ming. Ming pointed at himself, wondering why he and also their teacher asked her why. Ayla then lied that Ming was her cousin and they were relatives. Ming was so confused upon hearing what Ayla said. His friend then gave him a thumbs up and said that he could not believe Ming hid a beautiful cousin from them. Since Ayla said she was related to Ming, the professor then gave what she asked for. He permitted her to sit behind Ming, and Ayla then gave thanks to the professor and walked toward the table behind Ming. Ming was not looking at her. As she passed through Ming, she said in a low voice that Ming seemed to have recovered from the sequelae of last night. "Has your memory recovered?" Ayla asked. But Ming replied that he didn't understand what Ayla was talking about. Ayla sat down behind him and stared at Ming. The fairy with her then said that Ming survived the sequelae too fast in a short period of time. Compared to Ayla back then took 3 days to recover his memory. As per Ayla, sequelae takes 3 minus 5 days to recover in general. And the strange thing for her is the fact that Ming easily merged with the Queen of Thorns. And she's curious about the compatibility between Ming and the Queen of Thorns. She also mentioned that there would be a lot of trouble waiting for Ming after all. When the professor finished with the last, one man approached Ayla and invited her to have a talk on a chat app. But then, one lady hit him and said that he was such a pervert. More students approached Ayla and asked different questions while Ming's friend was just staring at the lady and told Ming that his cousin was really popular. But then, as he looked at the seat of Ming instantly disappeared. Ming was in the field for their PE class. His friend came and handed him a soda while asking why he was sweating. Ming refused to accept the soda and casually said that he was fine. "What the hell is wrong with you? You can tell me. Do you have any kind of problems?" his friend asked, and Ming still said that it was nothing. But deep inside him, he was wondering about what happened to him, as it seemed like he was in a comic to meet a girl and transferred to his school. He was sure it wasn't a coincidence, but he also could not think of a reason why the lady was here. At this time, his friend saw Ayla in the field. Ayla is ready to attend their PE class with a sexy outfit. While Ming was staring at her, she also noticed him. Ming's friend then told him that they must hurry up and go to attend their PE class. According to their PE teacher, the city decided to delay the annual sports meeting until next month, so for today's physical education class, he will test the physical fitness of some of the students and he will choose some outstanding students right after. He instructed the students to divide themselves into groups in terms of gender. He was confused the moment he saw Ayla group herself in the boys' team, but then Ayla said it didn't matter since she was fine with it. She then positioned herself to take the first 100-meter sprint. The teacher whistled as a sign that students could now run. A strong blow of wind passed through the professor the moment Ayla ran at a fast speed. Ming was also speechless when he saw Ayla run so fast that no one was able to reach her. She sprints without knowing that everyone stops and stares at her. After running, students played volleyball and Ayla smashed the hall strongly. Ming remained speechless, wondering why the lady moved to their class and what she meant about the words she said to him earlier. Plus, he was still wondering about what happened to his body yesterday, and there was also a feeling that he had already seen Ayla before. Ayla played ping pong and the same thing happened since she always hit the ball with a strong force. The ball disappeared, which confused her opponent. Ayla got the highest score in each sport, and seeing it makes Ming nervous knowing that the lady was strong. After PE class, it's time to go home. While Ming was walking inside the campus, he heard two students talking about Ayla, saying that Ayla had broken their school record in terms of sports. One of the ladies also said that she saw Ayla's move with her own eyes, that even the men became useless for not being able to defeat her. Ming suddenly ran away from the lady. While running, he took a glance at the ladies, but someone suddenly stopped him from running. He was startled and felt terrified. He begged for mercy and then he stopped panicking the moment he heard a lady's voice saying that it was fine. It turned out that it was Ayla. Ayla said hi to him with a smile on her face. Ayla went to Ming's house, and inside the house, she summoned something in her chest. A shining ball appeared, and inside this ball was a fairy. The fairy was yawning, and seeing this creature made Ming shocked. As per Ayla, this fairy is Behilf. She explains that fairies are a different creation of another civilization that has arrived in the human world for some special reasons. Now, she tells Ming that he needs to know he's no longer an ordinary person and that the rules of ordinary society are no longer suitable for him. Which also means that he is not safe anymore. Ming was silent upon hearing it. The lady then asked him if he still recalled what happened last night. She said that the battle that happened is such a very common battle in the fairies' world, and sometimes conflicts escalate and only end with bloodshed. She also added that Ming could possibly even face death. She knows that this situation may be unacceptable for Ming, but things have happened and she promises to help him adapt to the life of a fairy's world. Her fairy was so proud while she was talking. The fairy also promised to help Ming. Ming stopped them from talking. Both Ayla and the fairy were silent and stared at him. Ming squeezed his legs and said that he didn't want to hear ridiculous stories about fairies. He grits his teeth out of anger while stating that he wouldn't be in this situation now if she didn't meet Ayla last night. Ayla was silent and just allowed him to vent his anger, knowing that Ming was still in shock. Ming cannot accept the fact that he was beaten for no reason and somehow ended up being possessed, and a strange transfer student, which is Ayla. He also cannot believe how Ayla easily told him that bloodshed or killing may happen in the future, which is normal and should be accepted by him. Why do I have to encounter such a thing? He asked with a loud voice full of anger. Ayla also screamed at him, asking him to calm down. Ming was dumbfounded. He felt down and both of them were silent. The fairy of Ayla was about to say something, but she was cut off when Ayla spoke, telling Ming that he must have to lie with it. She pointed at Ming and told him that he was not safe right now. According to her, the man who fought with them yesterday will come back to take the fairy that possessed Ming, and she believes that person, Johnson, is a person that Ming can't handle for now. Ming was silent for a moment. He suddenly smiled and suggested to Ayla to give the fairy to Johnson since he didn't want it. Ayla was silent and Ming instantly knew the meaning of her silence. He angrily asked if there was a way to take out the fairy from his body. The fairy of Ayla answers yes, there's a way to separate the fairy from his body. Ming then asked how, and the fairy then answered that it would only be separated from his body by killing him. She explains that Ming's body will dissipate after his death and the fairy core will stay. Ming then concludes that it is what Ayla said earlier, that he is not safe anymore. Ayla shakes her head and says yes, he's right. Ming was flustered. He then imagined himself to be killed just to get the fairy's core from him. And with that, he knows there will be people who feel sorrowful once he's gone. Thinking about it makes him feel shattered to pieces. Originally, Ayla wanted to take him back to their base to keep him safe, but during this time, their base had special circumstances so there was no way she could bring Ming there. Anyways, you can rest assured, this matter is up to me. During this time, I will act as your guard and teach you how to fight, she stated. She also informed Ming that the fairy in his body was very strong, probably stronger than she thought, so she was sure enough that Ming wouldn't be in danger. Ming remained emotionless. Ayla's fairy then told him that he had the Queen of Thorns, and although she hadn't seen it, she wanted to let Ming know that there were only 2 queens among them fairies. She tapped Ming's head and assured him that he wouldn't have any problems. This time, Ayla realizes that Ming hasn't talked to his fairy yet. Ming was confused since he never expected to have a conversation with the fairy residing in his body. Ayla's fairy then explains that he can talk to his fairy the same as how they talk now. Ayla also concludes that Ming was exhausted after fighting Johnson, so he ran out of energy and went to a deep sleep. She suddenly ordered Ming to take off his clothes, and Ming was shocked and suddenly blushed since it was the first time someone asked him to remove his clothes. He immediately removed his pants, but Ayla covered her eyes while her fairy angrily told Ming that Ayla never said to take off his pants. Ming apologizes and admits that he misunderstood it. He removed his top and he felt so uncomfortable since he was in front of a lovely lady. Ayla then asked him to relax and informed him that she was about to start rumping energy from him, so he must be ready. Ayla activated her power, but Ming asked for a little bit more time and questioned her if this process was painful. Ayla then answered that it was a little bit painful, just like a bug bite. Ming then closed his eyes and permitted Ayla to do what she needed. Ayla then cast her magic power to Ming, and Ming's body shook while in the process. He was surrounded by lightning strikes coming from Ayla, and after a few seconds, he suddenly felt severe pain, causing him to grit his teeth and scream in agony. A purple light emerged and there was like a purple crystal coming out from his skin. He wondered what it was and he still screams in pain. A path in his eyes appeared and he suddenly felt like he dropped into this path and entered a strange world. He continued to fall until he saw a silhouette. He screamed no as he thought he would die in this exit. As he completely entered, he saw a white surrounding while below was a purple petal. He looked around and saw a tall flower. The flower suddenly bloomed and a lovely lady came out. Ming was surprised and he then noticed that he was inside a ball and was floating heading to the lady. He panicked while the lady was just calm and extended her finger. She tried to reach Ming while Ming's hand moved on its own. Their fingers collided and a blinding light emerged. This light suddenly became a small dark ball and Ming opened his eyes and found himself back in his senses. He was lying on the ground while Ayla remained standing and the dark ball was above them. Ayla then declared that Ming's fairy was coming. Her fairy was looking forward to seeing the Queen of Thorns while Ming was nervous and even swallowed his saliva and uttered fairy. This dark ball slowly cracked, and when it completely cracked, they all then saw the Queen of Thorns. The Queen of Thorns slowly opened her eyes. Ayla and her fairy looked at each other's eyes. They both then greeted the Queen on Thorns and addressed her as Majesty. They bowed down in front of the Queen and the Queen then permitted them to raise their heads. She stares at Ayla's fairy and asks if she's a second-generation fairy since she didn't see any information about her. Hilf then answered that she's a fairy made at the end of the war and ended up not participating in the war. The Queen then said that Hilf was lucky for not participating in the war. She also asked about how many years have passed in her world since she's gone. Hilf counted it with her finger, then replied that it had been 6,500 years. The Queen was shocked since she never expected it would be that long. Behind her was Ming, waving his hand and saying hi to his fairy. The Queen then looked at him and Ming suddenly felt nervous again. The Queen then approached him. She said her name was Vita Sibes and she called Ming as her host. She apologizes to Ming for possessing his body since the situation is urgent and the only one she saw that night to be possessed is Ming. And because of it, she doesn't have a choice but to choose Ming as her host, which she believes caused too much trouble for Ming. Ming was stuttering as he said it was fine for him now. He was about to say more words, but Vitas suddenly looked at him, so he felt awkward. Generation 2, what do you know about me? Vitas asked to Hilf. As per Hilf, she only knew that this queen had the power of space and arm transformation. Vitas then asks Ayla if it's common information, and Ayla then answers that it is common to their organization. I see. To keep the fact that you are my host hidden. It's better for you to never use the power of space unless you are about to die, Vidas stated, and this word is for her host Du Ming. Upon hearing it, Du Ming was terrified. According to Vidas, the adaptation rate between her and Du Ming is very low, so he must keep this as a secret from others. Otherwise, he will be in great danger. She also informed Du Ming that she's the queen of the first generation, and even if she didn't merge with anyone, her value is still immeasurable. While saying these words, she was looking at Hilf. Hilf then said that they have been born as the second generation through the research and analysis done on the first generation. She clenched her fists and added that the first generation's bodies had all the information needed. After they explained it, Ayla then asked Du Ming if he now understood the value of the Queen of Generation 1. Du Ming then answered yes. Ayla then approached Vidas and asked what the adaptation rate was between her and Du Ming. Vidas felt down as she answered 16%. Ayla was sad to hear it, and her fairy was also shocked knowing that it was too little. On the other hand, Du Ming doesn't understand what they are talking about. Vidas summoned a portal while stating that Du Ming doesn't have enough power now, so it's useless that she merged him. She then bids goodbye to everyone and vanishes using the portal she casts. Du Ming stared at the dark circle and witnessed how it disappeared into his chest. After the queen left, Ayla was thinking about Vidas and Du Ming's adaptation rate. Du Ming then asked what the 16% means, and Hilf answered it's the rate of his adaptation with the Queen of Thorns. According to her, the second generation fairy can achieve an adaptation rate of about 10% with anyone on the street. Ayla then added that the minimum needed to adapt to the second generation is 15%. Although she doesn't know how much Du Ming needed exactly to merge with the first generation, 16% is still too low. Du Ming was down upon hearing it. Ayla then told him not to worry since the adaptation rate could be improved. Just like her, she was just 30% in the beginning but now has increased to 80%. She gave back Du Ming's clothes and told him to stop the discussion since they also needed to rest. She stretched her arms and informed Du Ming that she would start to train her by tomorrow since it was the weekend. She also asked Du Ming if there was a vacant room in his house, and Du Ming blushed while asking the lady if she wanted to live in his house. Your guard should be with you in the most dangerous moments. What if something happens? Ayla replied, and Du Ming agreed with the lady. They then took a rest for the night and woke up early in the morning. Ayla started the training by running with Du Ming. After 4 hours of running, Du Ming complained that he could not run anymore. He was panting heavily while telling the lady that he only slept for 3 hours last night and already run for 4 hours this morning. Ayla decided to understand Du Ming, so she proclaimed that the endurance training was now done, so they should now move to another place. They went to an abandoned place and summoned both of their fairies. Ayla said that Vidas mentioned that she could give her host a fast regeneration, and now Ayla wants to make sure how fast that is. Vidas then explains that growing a limb in the current adaptation rate would take 6 hours while an ordinary fracture would take 10 minutes. Ayla then agreed that it was too fast and stated that the regeneration ability of the first generation is indeed much faster than the second generation. She walked and removed her small bag from her waist, then hung it on the metal while declaring that they should now start with their practical training. Du Ming only listened to her, but he was clueless about what to do. Armed load, Ayla uttered, and she suddenly began the process of transformation and transformed herself after a few seconds in her battle dress. Du Ming was so impressed upon witnessing it. Hilf at the same time was so proud while Vidas was emotionless. Ayla then informs Du Ming that he can also load his own arm. Du Ming scratches his hair and is about to say that he can't make it, but then Hilf tells him that he must feel the position of his heart. She makes Du Ming remember the time when he was attacked for the first time. At that time, he had control over his abilities and was able to load his own arm. Now, Hilf instructed him to feel what weapon was best for him and choose it. It doesn't matter which one you choose because the number of weapons that the concubine can register is unlimited, Vidas stated. Du Ming stared at his fist and decided to try it. He closed his eyes and saw himself standing at the top of several weapons. There are guns, swords, daggers, bows, hammers, and many more, but the weapon he chose is one dagger and a shield. He opened his eyes and was shocked to see himself successfully load a weapon. He was so amazed at the weapons he was holding, while Ayla at the same time said that he had a good choice for getting offensive and defensive weapons. Du Ming then informed her that both of these weapons were his favorite weapons in the game. My strength is equal to Johnson. That's why I will imitate some of his attacks to train you, Ayla stated. She then destroyed the metal beside her and grabbed a straight one to use it as a weapon the same as Johnson had. She gave a signal to Du Ming and Du Ming got scared with how she looked at him. Ayla then charged at Du Ming and Du Ming prepared himself to fight back despite that he was still clueless about what to do. Unfortunately, Ayla hit his arm, causing his bone to be dislocated, and let go of his sword. He then flew away and strongly slammed into the wall. He screamed in pain and gritted his teeth when Ayla hit the wall near his face. Ayla then gave him the knowledge not to try always using the sword to block, but instead, it should be the shield. She also told Du Ming to always remember to observe the direction of his enemy's attack carefully. Du Ming was moaning in pain. His body was trembling, but Ayla still ordered him to stand. But then, Ming was struggling and he told the lady she couldn't stand anymore, especially since his hand was in pain. Luckily, his bones slowly connected and the pain instantly went away. He moved his hand and was surprised to see it had recovered in a short span of time. Ayla then told him to stand and fight again. Ming then got up and answered okay. He picked up his sword and started the match. Still, he flew away and slammed on the wall. Not just once but several times. Vitas was so disappointed, but she hoped Ming could do it. Late afternoon had come and at this time, Ming was full of wounds. Luckily, Ayla extended her hand to help Ming rise and told him that today's training was done. Let's use this to cure your wounds, it really has a fast effect, Hilf stated while carrying a bag of their first aid kit. Ayla removed the objects that struck the skin of Ming. Ming was so sad and suddenly asked Ayla if this training would really be useful for him. Ayla paused and Ming suddenly cried while saying that he was aware that everything they did today was without any benefit and he couldn't even do a little thing against Ayla in combat. He wanted to say more, but Ayla suddenly squeezed his wound, causing him to complain that it was painful. But his wound suddenly slowly vanished while Ayla told him that she would definitely make sure that he would stay alive. She even promised it. Ming didn't respond and just trusted the lady since she knew more than him. They got home and Ayla was already in her room. Hilf suddenly told her that she was so tricky. Ayla then said that she didn't expect the adaptation rate of Ming to be so low. This time, she studies Johnson's next attack and she concludes that Johnson would surely bring someone to help him when the day comes. No matter which one comes, she believes that man would lose the fighting power in 2 minutes. Hilf then asked her if she was sure that Ming would last for about 2 minutes, but as per Ayla, Ming would only last for about 30 minutes even if he kept training for half a month. Ming was shocked upon knowing it since Vitas decided to let him know about it. He was so silent while Vitas continued to explain that Ming's current adaptation rate is too low to even use her active ability, which is why she believed Ming would only last for about 30 minutes once he fought Johnson. How did I defeat him last time? Can't I use the previous method? Ming asked, but Vitas answered no and informed him that he only defeated Johnson because of the initial outbreak last time. Moreover, she also used the soul of the previous host to suppress the enemy. Ming asked about the previous host she mentioned, and Vista suddenly summoned a ball and showed it to Ming. Inside this ball is her previous host, and she said that it would disappear if Ming used it again. Ming was so confused now. He doesn't know what else he can do and he even cannot understand the use of his training earlier. What am I supposed to do now? He asked with annoyance, and Vitas felt pity for him, so she honestly told him that there was a way to make his survival rate up to 40%. Ming was shocked upon knowing it and he then asked what trick it was. The next day, they immediately headed into the abandoned building after running for a few hours. Now, they immediately continued Ming's practical training. As expected, the same thing happened to Ming as he failed several times already. He breathes heavily and despite that he's in too much pain, he still tries to get up to fight. Ayla saw his determination this time. Ming then told her to come again, so Ayla gave what he wanted, causing him to stumble and fall. Hilf noticed the changes of Ming, so she asked Vitas how Ming changed. Vitas then answered that she told Ming he could raise his survival rate to 40%. Hilf was excited and asked Vitas if what she said was true. Vitas just looked at her in the eyes, so she became silent. As per Vitas, Ming needs some time to get ready, and also, she believes that this kind of training isn't enough. Ming felt so weak and Vitas this time then told the Ayla to cut Ming's limbs and not show any mercy. Hilf and Ayla were shocked upon hearing it. Last night, Ming was asking Vitas about what he should do to raise his survival rate to 49%. That night, Vitas told him that they needed Ayla's help in this method. She told Ming what to do, and that is the reason why Ming kept on accepting an attack from Ayla. He closed his eyes, then opened it instantly and bravely told Ayla to come and hit him. Ayla then said she understood. She then grabbed the metal and summoned her main weapon. She activated her breeze technique and she sighed while she attacked it to Ming. This attack was too powerful, but Ming didn't dare to run away. She screamed in pain and this attack of Ayla struck the building. Hilf was shocked that Ayla really hit Ming with it. She was scared thinking that Ming would die with it, but Ayla told her not to worry since she only used 10% of her power. Ming's clothes were scratched while he was spinning in the breeze technique of Ayla, and he heard Vitas telling him that this would be severely painful and there would be no regeneration for him to ease the pain. Ming vomits blood and Vitas asks him if he can afford to suffer the pain. Ming fell to the ground and despite being hurt so badly, he still answered Vitas that he could. After it, Vitas then declared that the training would be like this from now on since after all, before implementing this method, one must get used to suffering a lot of pain. The next day, Ming attended his class. As he was heading to his classroom, his friend called him and said that he hadn't seen Ming playing games this weekend. His friend hung on his shoulder and asked him if he was worried about his PC. Ayla then interfered, stating that she helped Ming in his lesson since she promised Ming's parents to take care of Ming. In the following days, Du Ming's bones were broken after his endurance training in the morning. After school, his bone is still broken. That's it for week 4. One night, he was wearing clothes and suddenly heard Vita speak to remind him that there was only one copy of this battle memory, and if Du Ming lost consciousness during the memory installation, he would fail completely. Du Ming then lay down on his bed and informed Vitas that they could now start the memory installation. Before it started, Vitas informed him that she would be disconnected from him for a short time, then everything would depend on him. After giving instructions, the memory installation instantly started. The lightning struck in the eyes of Du Ming and it entered his brain. The strikes covered his brain and he was in severe pain. He gritted his teeth while he was suffering the pain. He was inside a lightning ball while his memories slowly installed. His hands were shaking and he never experienced this kind of pain in his life. The memories of fighting over the past few decades have been installed in his brain in a few minutes. At the same time, it was installed with all the injuries Vitas suffered on the battlefield for decades. After a few minutes, the memory installation finished, but unfortunately, Du Ming passed out. Many memories of Vitas are installed inside his mind. He saw a memory of Vitas when she kept calling her previous host named Naomi. That time, Naomi was killed. Vitas then comes out from Naomi's body and several people come down to her. These people disagreed with what Vitas had done and also accused her of ruining their capital. Vitas fought the people of her own capital and killed several men. A lot of people don't like what she says and even conclude she's crazy after her host is gone. There was a time she was chased to be killed, but she chose to fight back. She was fighting alone with just a sword and killed more people. There was also a memory of her instantly in the mind of Du Ming when her host Naomi held her hand and said that he believed in her, so she must do what she wanted. For Vitas, Naomi was a gentle person. She bids goodbye to him knowing that she will be gone forever. She continues to battle above water. A strong lightning appeared and a huge monster emerged from it. Vitas saw it with her own eyes, and this monster was charging at her. Vitas remained calm while the monster created a strong blow of wind causing the ocean to waver. This monster aimed to kill Vitas, but Vitas easily slashed it to half. She also had a memory of her when Naomi asked her what she would do if he died one day. But then Vitas confidently said it wouldn't happen since she was always by his side to protect her. But in the end, she fought alone by herself since Naomi died. The last memory installed in Du Ming's mind is when the lady stood while holding a sword and he saw that he was below the lady. Upon seeing his face, he suddenly opened his eyes and the lady was glad to see him finally awake. Du Ming gets up and looks around to check that he's still inside his room. Vitas then reminded him of two things. She said that Du Ming seemed to lose consciousness yesterday less than 2 minutes after the memory began to install. However, depending on what happened, it could be that the memory installation failed, but unexpectedly it's finished. She concludes that there seems to be an undetectable existence inside Du Ming that accepts all the memories. Since Du Ming was clueless, he asked the lady if the memory installation was successful. Vitas answered yes, and Du Ming then lay back on his bed and asked if there was no need now for him to break bones again. Lucky for him, Vitas answered yes. After their conversation, he then runs for a few hours together with Ayla, and after a few hours, Ayla then permits him to stop. Du Ming breathed deeply right after, and Ayla then asked her how he feels now after their training for several days. Du Ming then answered that he doesn't feel tired even with much exercise and he feels physically stronger than before. Ayla then said that there was some good news she needed to say to Du Ming. She stated that the 8 applications she submitted to ARC has been approved. While they were talking, they weren't aware something dark was heading their way. Specifically, these things went directly to Ayla. Du Ming was shocked and he panicked the moment he saw the lady being pulled by several dark hands. Before it happened, Johnson was talking with his daughter, Betsy, over the phone. He informed his daughter that he was on a mission and he promised to come back and accompany her right after his task. He also assured her to bring her the present she wanted to receive, and before the call ended, he reminded her daughter to take her pills before going to bed. He then hung up the call and surrendered his card to his boss in exchange for his freedom. He promised his wife, Anna, back then to let his daughter live a normal life. And when he was with Betsy, Betsy suddenly collapsed. He immediately admitted her to the nearest hospital where his wife had been admitted before. According to the doctor, his daughter Betty is suffering from a disease the same as Anna, and he concludes this disease is genetic. After knowing it, Johnson was thinking of a way to save his daughter from dying. In the end, he decides to go and steal the ferry from Du Ming. He immediately gave an order to the crow on his shoulder and the crow immediately fled. Right after that, Ayla was captive. Du Ming screamed Ayla's name and tried to chase her, but he failed and ended up falling into the ground. Ayla screamed Du Ming's name and Du Ming did the same thing. A sharp weapon suddenly struck on the ground behind Du Ming and Du Ming immediately turned around, wondering who it was. Upon checking, he saw Johnson. He got nervous the moment he heard Vita's voice saying that this man was their enemy named Johnson. Johnson walked toward him with anger, and seeing his scary aura made Du Ming panic, thinking that he would definitely be killed today. His body was shaking, but Vitas told him to calm down. She told Du Ming that he already practiced all this time, plus he successfully finished the memories installation, so he had everything necessary to fight Johnson. Du Ming then realizes that there's no reason for him to be afraid of. He told himself that he needed to believe in himself since he was different now. He bravely stood in front of Johnson, and Johnson noticed that Du Ming's breath was now different than before. Du Ming was surprised, but he never gave any response at all. Johnson then forgets about it since it is not important to him for now. What the hell you did to Ayla? Du Ming angrily asked, and Johnson instantly possessed the power of his weapon and charged at Du Ming while saying that he would let Du Ming see Ayla soonest. He aimed his weapon at Du Ming, and Du Ming became terrified again. At the same time, Ayla was brought to the nearby area. She was tied up with a chain so that she couldn't save Du Ming. She turned her head behind and saw a gigantic crow. Someone then headed toward her. It was a man wearing a black cape. I didn't expect it to be you, Ayla said upon seeing the man. Going back to Du Ming, he luckily managed to block Johnson's weapon using his shield, but it was too heavy, causing his hands to feel numb. But then, he motivates himself that he can do it, so he is able to push his shield and deflect Johnson's attack. Johnson ended up hitting the ground, but he seized this opportunity to flip and kick Du Ming. Du Ming flew away with the strong blow of Johnson. He coughed and kneeled on the ground, while Johnson at the same time felt weird since it had been a few days, but he could feel now that Du Ming could confront him in a fight. He also confirmed that the speed of Du Ming's progress didn't match the information he got. Du Ming stood while still coughing, and he uttered that it was working so he could do it. If I do everything I can, then I may beat him, he added while summoning his sword. He held tightly to his sword, and Johnson then uttered, I haven't recovered from my injury last time, and this little devil suddenly became more and more annoying. He grips his sword and points it to Du Ming. He then shot it while it was flaming. Luckily, Du Ming clearly saw it. He then blocked it using his shield, and he was surprised that he made it. Johnson's weapon bounced back to him, but he attacked it to Du Ming once again. Du Ming avoided it again, and it went back to Johnson, but Johnson threw it to Du Ming for the third time. This time, Du Ming's arm was hit by Johnson's weapon, so his arm got cut off, which made him dumbfounded. His arm flew away and fell on the ground with the shield. Du Ming kneeled on the ground and screamed in agony. His blood also splattered, and Vitas told him to calm down because his consciousness was collapsing. Still, Du Ming can't deny the fact that it was too painful. He cried in pain while screaming, Do not blame me. This is happening to you because you own the ferry, and I need it so my daughter can survive, Johnson stated while pointing his spear at Du Ming. Du Ming remembered the doctor telling him that he must be aware of his daughter's illness, which would cost a lot to treat. Du Ming then told the doctor to do everything he could, and he promised that he would find money and pay him since he doesn't want to lose his second love. At this moment, Du Ming cried so much while Vitas still reminded him that his consciousness was about to collapse. Unfortunately, Johnson was eager to kill Du Ming. He said goodbye to Du Ming, and Du Ming screamed out of anger and pain since he didn't want to die just like this. On the other hand, Vitas felt pity for him. She felt Du Ming's consciousness about to collapse, so she said goodbye to him in advance. As for Ayla, it was Shadow, the crow, who was the one who kidnapped her. He then told Ayla not to be so mad since he only kidnapped her for money. Shadow charged at her while Ayla asked what he would do to her. Shadow then suddenly mentioned that he knows Ayla's true identity and that she's the daughter of a person named Fangju. Let me go and I'll double the price, Ayla said, but then Shadow said that he's a man with basic principles. He also stated that he already received the payment, so he needed to trap Ayla for a while since he believed it would hurt his reputation if he let her go. He snapped his finger while telling Ayla that she must stay in his crow's nest for a while. He let Ayla enter his nest and slowly shut the door. Ayla was mad while staring at him, but Shadow still closed the door. At the same time, Du Ming's body was flaming in purple. Johnson covered his eyes and he wondered what was going on. The cocoon appeared again and a strong blow of wind made Johnson blinded. He covered his eyes so he didn't know what exactly was happening. Surprisingly, Du Ming's body started to transform just like the first time he was possessed by Vilas. His cut arm becomes crystal, and seeing what happened to him makes Johnson conclude that Du Ming is having an outbreak. What made him shocked was knowing that it should only happen one time. So that's how it is, Vilas uttered while staring at Du Ming's body. According to her, there is a new consciousness that takes over the control of the body. As a result, the battle memories came from here. And although Du Ming's adaptation rate is rising at the moment, this consciousness is incomplete. At this rate, if they can't hold down their energy, Vilas believes they'll die. She extended her hand, trying to reach Du Ming, but someone suddenly hugged her. In an instant, Vilas knew that it was Naomi's soul. Naomi was looking at her and told her to give up his remnant to save his current host. But then, Vilas doesn't want it. I've paid a huge price to barely keep your remnant. No matter when, I will not give up. I promised you, I will always protect you, Vilas stated. But then, she stopped when Naomi moved closer to her face and smiled at her. This time, Velas chose to understand Naomi and she decided to choose the safety of her second host rather than Naomi. She cried and summoned the ball, starting the process of engine overload soul reconstruction. By this, Ming gained back his strength and he was possessed by a powerful aura. This breath is different from what it was before. Johnson uttered, "Come, fish." Ming said with a wide smile on his face that annoyed Johnson and said that Ming wanted to die quickly. He then charged at Ming while screaming that even if he couldn't use overload again, he was still going to slaughter Ming. He was flaming all over his body while Ming was just standing, waiting for him to get closer. Blood then splattered above after one of them got struck. On the other hand, the craw nest is shining and suddenly explodes the moment Ayla manages to come out. Ayla went to Shadow to punish him and Shadow was shocked to see that this lady easily broke his nest. Ayla then activates her breeze technique and casts her snowstorm, but then Shadow asks her to stop and says that he didn't get the money to deal with her. He also asked Ayla if she didn't care about what happened to her friend Ming. Ayla paused and immediately fled, deciding to let go of Shadow for now. She headed back to Ming, hoping that Ming didn't die. A strong red lightning strike happened and Johnson's spear was covered with blood. Johnson was sweating as it turned out that he was stabbed by Ming in his chest. This time, Ayla came back and called Ming's name. She saw that Ming stabbed Johnson and upon hearing her voice, Ming pulled out her arm and Johnson's tears dropped from his eyes as he uttered, "I'm sorry." He fell on the ground and he passed away in an instant. Together with it is a strong drop of rain. Ming slowly gets back to his original form. He kneeled on the ground and saw Johnson's body slowly disappearing. He covered his mouth while crying because of the fact that he killed Johnson. He screamed so loud out of anger since he could not believe he killed someone. Ayla uttered his name and she felt pity for Ming since she knew Ming didn't intend it to happen. While Ming was crying, above him was the Shadow in his craw form. He saw everything and he said that the scene was too interesting. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you wish to have another part of this recap, please give us at least 2,000 likes. Please don't forget to comment and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Until next time.